Hello everyone, hope we're doing alright, hope we're keeping safe, and I hope we're keeping sane. Now, I want to talk today about the top 4 lies that I believe we as gamblers continue to tell ourselves whilst in the cycle of addiction. Now, whilst I've dressed this up in kind of a YouTube-y top 4 kind of a way, it is a very important subject, and the reason I want to talk about it is because these are all lies that I told myself whilst in the midst of addiction. And they're all lies that I used to perpetuate my addiction. When I was at that stage where subconsciously I knew that I had a real problem, but I wasn't willing or ready to own up to it, or most importantly, I didn't want to acknowledge it, I didn't want to have to do something about it, I use these lies to keep that addiction going. The one other thing I'll say before I get into these particular lies is that a lot of the lies we tell as gamblers are to other people, and these can be very, very harmful. They can be very destructive around relationships, around friendships. We lie to justify our, location. Where have you been? Oh, well, I've been late at work or whatever, or to justify borrowing money from friends or family. Or lies can be somewhat bigger than that as well, and can actually lead to real dishonest behaviour. And I may address these lies in another video, and I think certainly something I've talked about in the past. But what I want to do today, because I think these are particularly harmful, are cover off the lies that we as gamblers and as gambling addicts have a tendency to tell ourselves. So I will do them in no particular order, mainly because I don't have the Top of the Pops music ready to play. But number 4, it's only money. Now this is one we've almost certainly all used, I'm sure, at some point. Normally as a response to someone's comments about our gambling losses. It used to happen quite a lot when I used to play fruit machines in pubs and stuff, and someone would have been there watching. There's always someone watching, isn't there, over your shoulder or from a table or whatever, and they will notice the amount of money that you've lost, notice the amount of money you've put into these machines, and you say, as a sort of defense mechanism, it's only money, because you're justifying it not to them, but to yourself as to why you've lost this money. It's also, like I say, a way of preserving face, of saving face, because if we can say that it's only money, we're dusting it off like we can afford it, like it doesn't affect us. When inside, the feeling for, you have when you've lost a significant amount of money, you get that knot in your stomach, and you know that whilst maybe you're not fully reeling from it now, that come the next morning or come later that day, you'll be just sitting there and you'll have that dawn of realisation as to the damage you've caused. So it's only money is a huge lie. Not only is it a huge lie, even if you can afford to lose the money, by saying it's only money, it almost implies that there's nothing else that you'd rather be spending that money on than sitting there staring at a screen and pushing a button. It's only money is only true if there's nothing else in your life that you want for. And I know as a gambler that every time I lost a significant amount of money, I mentally berated myself and I compared it to the things that I could have spent that money on. And I'm not always talking about material things, but so often I would tell myself, well, I could have used that money to take my wife to that restaurant she'd like to go to, or I could have booked us a couple of nights away in that place that, she'd like to visit. And I always focused on these examples because they were the ones that made me feel particularly bad. I felt like I'd let someone else down. And as a gambler, we have a propensity to not only protect ourselves from pain, but when we acknowledge it, we have a way by which to make ourselves feel as bad as we possibly can in that moment. And often we look to ways that we can do that. So I used to compare it to, like I say, things I could have treated my loved ones to that I could no longer do because I'd just lost the money. Now, It's Only Money has a couple of things that often you hear attached to it. Another one is you can't take it with you. That's a great one. Or another, a variant of that, of course, is, well, you could be hit by a bus tomorrow. Well, yes, you could. I hope you're not. But the extreme likelihood is that you probably won't be hit by a bus tomorrow. In the same way that whilst you can't take your money with you, unless there's something, that you're not sharing with people, then you are at least going to have a little bit of life ahead of you with which that money could have been, or could have played quite an important role. And And I say life as in not just being alive, but actually living. And as I explained with my previous examples of thinking of all the things I could have done with my wife and with my family by using the money that I just lost in the machines, you have a life to live. And be that another month, be that another 50, 60, 70 years, whatever, then yes, you can't take it with you, but you can use it for something far better than gambling in the interim. And as with all these lies, we know this, and we are telling ourselves this to perpetuate our addiction, to allow ourselves to continue and to mask the pain, to allow us to continue, but also to save face in front of those around us to show that we're not hurting, and to kind of bat off any suggestions that maybe we're gambling more than we can afford, which of course generally we probably are. The next lie that we have a tendency to tell ourselves during our periods of gambling, and this is particularly prevalent with people who play things like roulette or slots or any kind of random game with a desired outcome, which I suppose covers most of gambling, doesn't it? And that lie is, well, it must be due. It must be due. Taken the simplest terms, it might be if you're betting red or black on roulette. You say, well, I've been betting red 4 times, it's coming black 4 times, red must be due. Therefore, I'm going to double down, I'm going to increase my bet on this. Happens on slots as well. You play for X amount of spins and you don't get a bonus, so you go, well, it must be due, I'll up the stake. And that way, when the bonus does come in, not if, when the bonus does come in, because it's due, remember, then I've got a much higher chance of getting a larger chunk of the money I've lost back. Because of course it's a bonus multiplier, isn't it? So if you double your stake, you'll get twice as much back, and that will help cover the losses you've accumulated thus far. Once again, this is a lie we tell ourselves, not only to justify our actions, which we are doing by saying, well, actually, I have to bet more now. Of course I have to bet more because it's due. I would be, it would be foolish of me not to gamble, which if you just take that statement in isolation is absolutely crazy. But it'd be foolish of me not to gamble more, even though I've already lost money that I can't really afford. But I need to gamble more money that I really can't afford, because I'd be stupid not to gamble money that I can't afford in order to pursue some element of financial recovery in a game of chance. It's absolutely crazy. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this rule. I appreciate that with percentage-controlled AWPs and stuff like that. But by and large, we are talking about casinos, we're talking about games of chance, we're talking about roulette and other table games, all those sorts of things. And we have this perpetuation to just say, look, it must be due. And not only are we justifying our, further betting of money that we can't afford, we are justifying extending out our gambling session well beyond the constraints of where it should have ended if we were, playing within our means. And that is an incredibly, incredibly dangerous lie. And it doesn't just contain itself within the gambling session we're in. I historically have carried this forward. If I was playing a particular slot online and I didn't get any kind of result, next time I load up that online casino and make a deposit, where am I going? Well, it's obvious where I'm going. I'm going back to that slot because it owes me, doesn't it? It owes you that game owes you. It must be due. I must get a result from it soon, when obviously it's random. It's every spin is independent. Every spin of the roulette wheel is independent. It's no more due now than it was when you started. And any sort of expectations to the contrary, and I appreciate there are exceptions before I get flooded with comments telling me about rigged games. Any suggestion to the contrary is purely a way and a means to justify further gambling when we should have probably stopped quite a little while ago. The next lie, which actually is almost the bastard cousin of it must be due, which is, I knew that was going to happen. I knew that was going to happen. And this is an incredibly dangerous lie. And again, it's one that we tell ourselves as gamblers, or certainly I did. And as I always say, I'm speaking from experience here. And it comes kind of in sort of two forms, really. The first one is when you bet on, say, a sporting event, and it comes in. Your bet comes in. And you go, yeah, I knew that was going to happen. Man City beat Doncaster Rovers at home. Wow. What did you get? 1 to 30 on that? I don't know. But you go, yep, I knew that was going to happen. That's why I bet on it. So you're somehow patting yourself on the back, quite often for a relatively straightforward outcome. But also, the real danger for this lies in the fact that it is another justification for your gambling, because then in your mind, if you can convince yourself that you're not betting on something with a chance outcome, in fact, you know what you're doing, you know what you're betting on, it was your knowledge of football, it was your expertise in this field, whether that be whatever sport that being, whether that even be cards, and I'll probably have to put poker aside as an exception for this. But I knew that was going to happen. Therefore, I'm not gambling, am I? I'm making money. I'm almost investing, aren't I? I'm investing in my own knowledge of the game. I'm investing my own knowledge of the sport. Therefore, I'm not gambling, so I can keep doing this. And then obviously taken to the nth degree, that's where people think they can make money, and that is how so many gambling addictions start. I've heard so many stories from people who say, "Well, I bet on a sporting event. I bet on a sporting event that I was, wanted to watch, and my bet came in. And I thought, well, this is easy. I can do this as a means to invest. I can do this as a way of making money." And then eventually, well, we know how that story ends, don't we? But the other way we hear this, and the other way we tell ourselves this, I knew that was going to happen, is when you've had that 4 losing roulette spins on black, and you double up and you double up and you double up, and then it hits another black when you're betting on red. And you go, "Oh, I knew that was going to happen. I bloody knew that was going to happen." Well, no, you didn't. That's the thing. That's so obviously a lie to yourself. It's not in this sense of justification, but you feel somehow like you have a small victory in a loss because you're the smart one. You're second guessing the game. Obviously, you didn't know that was going to happen. If you knew that was going to happen, you never would have put those chips down on the mat. So I knew that was going to happen. Another lie. I can stop any time I want. Yeah, I don't think there was a bigger lie I ever told myself than this. And it's obviously a lie. If you're telling yourself this, in fact, if you're telling yourself almost any of these lies, you are subconsciously aware, and you're almost subconsciously admitting to yourself that you can't stop any time you want. If you could stop any time you want, then why haven't you stopped? Well, the tag-on line, the extra bit to this lie, which probably justifies this, is I just don't want to. I just don't want to. And there is almost certainly an element of truth in this. As gambling addicts, we're gambling because we don't want to stop. I've said many, many times, we can only recover when we make the decision that we actually want to draw a line under this, and we want to move on, and we want to change our lives, and we want to improve our lives, and we want to get gambling out of our lives. So whilst there's an element of truth in the "I just don't want to," tagline, I think it's safe to say that when we're saying this to ourselves, a part of us does want to, because a part of us is currently hurting when we say this, and a part of us doesn't want that pain, and wants that pain to go away. And by acknowledging or suggesting to ourselves that we could stop this, is suggesting to ourselves that there is a solution, there is a fix to this pain that we are feeling, and that we can take this pain away from ourselves, and we are the ones in control. And ultimately, we're not the ones in control. The addiction is in control, but we can take control with measures. There's lots of measures we can take, which I've discussed many times on this channel, and will almost certainly mention again at some in due course at some point. We need to take that control. So to say I can stop any time I want, yes, you can, but it ain't easy. And by saying I just don't want to, it's another excuse. It's another excuse to eke out that addiction for that little bit longer. I don't want to stop just yet. Not just yet. And sometimes we set ourselves arbitrary timescales, don't we? Maybe there's a big race meeting coming up, Cheltenham or something like that. And you go, well, I can't stop betting now because Cheltenham's coming up. So I'll stop betting after Cheltenham. So we are in ourselves acknowledging that we have a problem with betting and a problem with gambling, but we're going to continue doing it anyway because there's some arbitrary event coming up. And I appreciate that Cheltenham is a big event in the horse racing calendar. I get that. But if we are admitting to ourselves, albeit not in the words we tell ourselves, but subconsciously by coming out with all of these phrases, that we have a problem, why? Why are we extending out this problem? If you had a physical illness, You wouldn't say, well, I'm going to hang on to this because, you know, there's such and such a date coming up and then I'll stop having this illness. I'll go to the doctors after that. I don't want to get better before then. Why would I want to fix myself before then? It is at this point in the video where I realised I said I think there was 4 reasons. I think there's actually 4 lies, sorry. I think it's actually 5. And this is, we can count this as a bonus lie, shall we? And that is the one thing we tell ourselves as if we're betting on sports, and that is I bet on the game. I'm going down the pub to watch the football, and I'm betting on the game because it makes it more exciting. Multiple problems with this one, multiple problems, and again, it's something that I've suffered from. So in no way am I judging anyone. I'm not sitting here on a high horse preaching. These are lies that I have told myself time and time again. I'm betting on the game because it makes it more exciting. Look, I like watching football, and there's some games that I really like going out and watching. I like watching darts. There's several sports I like watching, and if a game is a game I really want to watch, I'll go and watch it. And if anything, if I had a bet on that game, it will spoil my enjoyment of the game because it affects what I want to happen. Now, of course, there are exceptions to this. If you're watching the World Cup and you're betting on England or, you know, whatever your national team is, might you have a little bit more interest in the game? Well, you shouldn't need to have. If it's a game where you are committed, it's a game where you are involved on a national or a club level, where you care about the outcome, you don't need gambling to improve that experience. If you need gambling to improve the experience of watching a sporting event, then you're not really interested in the sporting event. You're using the sport to justify the gambling rather than the other way round. So if you're watching Southend Crew, I don't think they're in the same division anymore. I certainly know Southend got relegated. But anyway, if you're watching Southend Crew and you're not a Southend or Crew fan, and you're making it more exciting by gambling, you're using that football game as a vessel for your gambling addiction, because you wouldn't be watching it otherwise. You're not making the game more exciting, you're excusing the gambling by watching the game. But you can cover it up because it's a sports bet, isn't it? It's not a game of chance. It's not as obvious as going into the bookies and putting money in the roulette machine, because it's a game of football that you're watching. Because I'm a football fan, aren't I? Well, are you? You might be a football fan, but are you a fan of that game? Probably not. You're a fan of gambling. But certainly gambling isn't a fan of you. So they're my most notable lies. I'm sure there's others. If you think of others, stick them in the comment section below. That's another incredibly YouTuber thing to say, isn't it? But yeah, if you can think of any others, stick them in the comment section below. I will at some point probably make a video on lies that we tell other people, which is bizarrely, I think, sometimes less damaging. Certainly to ourselves, but can certainly be damaging to our relationships. And it's important to identify if we are using these lies. And this is kind of why I made this video, because not only hopefully can people sort of relate to it and go, oh good, you know, I'm not the only one doing that, and that's kind of why I do this. But also, if you identify with a number of these, then maybe, you know, it's another red flag towards a problem which, you know, obviously you need to address, but maybe now's the time. Who knows? But anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. Look forward to speaking to you again soon, and have a good day. Stay safe, stay sane. All the best.